What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the CFB Whispers show. We have a jam-packed show, like I mentioned. And of course, you guys are already well known in terms of Dustin Manning, Dusty Buns. There you go. Welcome back to the show, Dusty. Of course, we also had to do this. This is something we had in the makings anyways. Kyle's obviously a longtime Ohio State fan. Figured we might as well bring him on. Who better to talk Ohio State football than Kyle himself? Kyle, how we doing, bro?
I'm doing great, Cam. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Appreciate you joining us. It was fun. I know I wanted to have you on last week. I had a great time with Dustin. Dustin and I, we not only went through this game, we kind of broke it down. We were a little high level with this game, I'd like to say, but we really went through all the games in the first round of the playoffs. But I'm geeking right now, dude. Like I'm excited to kind of break this one down because I think you guys are obviously going to be the ones. You guys are speaking from the fans' perspective, and instead of just seeing all these keyboard warriors, you guys are actually kind of going to go at it naturally, all by yourself. So I'm excited, obviously, to get this going. Obviously, the game is 2 days away. First time Tennessee's ever been in the playoffs. This is, I don't know the exact amount of times, but Ohio State's been here before. So, obviously, a tale of two tales, right? We're gonna kind of see how this goes. But really, I want to start with this. Kyle, you're obviously new to the show. Want to start with you for a moment. Ohio State's obviously been a long-time team of yours. Man, kind of just very briefly tell me how you started becoming a fan of Ohio State, obviously, and then let's just go from there.
So, I've been a fan of Ohio State for 17 years. I was born in Powell, Tennessee, probably like 15, 20 minutes away from the University of Tennessee. Nobody in my family is really ever football fans, so I just naturally started watching football, and just so happens the first team I ever watched was Ohio State versus Michigan. And to be honest, Cam, I fell in love with the way that Ted Ginn Jr. played the game. Like, he made me want to play football. And so I became a fan of him first, but then I've been locked on Buckeyes ever since.
And Dustin, I gotta know, man. I know you've been a longtime fan. You just mentioned that you and your family, y'all have season tickets. You're obviously in those environments when they're crazy. You're in those environments when y'all have been down. You know what it's like to be on both ends as well. Now Tennessee's, obviously at the top, bro. Kind of give me a little bit of a history before we really dive into this game.
I remember going to watch Peyton Manning play in Neyland when I was that young. I have this core memory as a child leaving a Vanderbilt game, I believe it was, up on my grandfather's shoulder, walking back to the car, and we weren't number one, but Tennessee's number one, this little kid, and everybody cheered, and it was just. I've been, dude. Yeah, you're right. I've been through the trenches. I've been through like the Jarrett Garantano, however the hell you say his name, like. And me and my grandfather would look at each other, and I'd just look at him and say, "Hey, we'll be good one day." But it does warm my heart to come from the bad days to the 2022 to this season, and I'm hella excited to be in the playoffs, dude. It's fun.
Dude, I'm excited to watch it again. I don't really have a bark in the fight. Obviously, everybody found out last week that I'm a Florida fan. Thank you, Dustin. I'm just gonna throw that out there. But you know what? Hey, I don't really care because it kind of makes things a little bit easier. I was trying to figure out ways to get around that, and you just really, cut through that. So appreciate that. Now that we're past that, I do want you guys to know that I did meet both y'all in Tennessee. So what are the odds of that? That's pretty wild. Obviously, I moved to Tennessee from Florida, and then obviously I met you guys, both of you guys, actually coincidentally, in my own rights of working. So excited, obviously, jump into this. But dude, let's just smack this thing right off the bat. This is huge. This is the game that people were anticipating. There was that narrative there for a little bit that Tennessee was probably going to pick Penn State if they had to choose between the two on who they might want to play over the other. Obviously, it turns out this is what's happening now. Both teams are extremely talented, especially along the lines of scrimmage. And obviously, both teams are extremely talented on the defensive side of the ball.
I think the story of this game is going to be the Ohio State defensive line, not the Tennessee defensive line.
Whoa, damn, that's huge. You know why? Because Tennessee's defensive line's been the story all year. Aside from Samson, of course, because Samson's obviously who comes in clutch in every moment when Tennessee is doing their thing. But that's a bold statement. That's pretty wild. What do you got to say to that, Dustin? Because I mean, it's not. We haven't seen a game at all year where Tennessee's defensive line hasn't shown up.
I'll touch on the freshman wide receiver that he spoke about,
Jeremiah Smith.
We're putting McCoy on him, and we shut down that number one Alabama wide receiver. Of course, I'm nervous. We'll see how that goes. But Cade Mays, our center, has not allowed one sack all season. Not one. Now, Nico has been sacked, but our offensive line has held up better than most offensive lines that we've had. I'm hoping that we hold together, and I'm hoping they block for Samson. And when you put Nico in the act too, when he uses his feet, that's just a triple threat. I was looking at. I'm sorry, I'm bad with names, and you just said it. But your wide receiver stats, I believe he has 8 touchdowns with around 60 receptions or something like that. And Thornton has probably 20 less receptions, 200 less yards, and I believe 4 less touchdowns. And that's when our passing game has been inconsistent. So I think there are a lot of factors here that we both know it's going to be cold and windy probably. But if Nico can throw the ball, I think it's going to be pretty wild. And Ohio State's always had a good defense. They've always had a very, very aggressive defense, but at the same time, I think our line, there's some big boys in there. And I think Cade Mays is going to want to hold that stat tight to zero sacks that are his fault.
So you said a few things there that I kind of wanted to touch on, and or actually Cam said the first thing. Cam, Tennessee versus the University of Georgia, they had 0 sacks. They had 2 quarterback pressures. So there has been a game that their defensive line has not been impressive and did not really change the outcome of the game. I wanted to add, too, that Tennessee's offense has only faced one top 25 defense. Do y'all know who that was?
If I were to just
Top 25 defense.
and it's probably the easy answer would be Georgia, wouldn't it?
Kentucky.
No, the answer, Oklahoma.
I call BS on that one.
I can actually see it. I kind of feel like that would have been my second guess. But of course, everybody got it wrong the first time.
Well, to touch on that, you're right. Our defense did not show up against Georgia. And I watched that game in pure, I wouldn't say anger, but like disappointment. I'm not mad at you, but I'm disappointed type stuff, because if we would have pressured the quarterback, different ball game. It wouldn't have been 31-17. It would have been, I don't know, but that outcome would have been way different. So,
well, what I can say,
Beck definitely played the game. He played his best game against y'all, so that was unfortunate because he's looked pretty bad for most of the
and
up and down.
I told Cam, sorry to interrupt. I told Cam last episode that, like, if Tennessee's good at something, if a quarterback has not shown his colors all year, Tennessee will let him win the Heisman that game. It's always been a Tennessee thing, and I don't know why, but there's always that one quarterback that we just let eat that game, and that just happened to be the Georgia game this year.
Here's my thing on this. So listen, with what I like to kind of bring up what Kyle mentioned. So Carson Beck really hasn't been consistent all year. I mean, on average, right out all the way up until the Florida game, he actually averaged just about 3 interceptions a game, which I thought was absolutely crazy. Going into that Florida game, he had 11 interceptions. I mean, that was just insane. Then ended up obviously throwing 3 more in that Florida game, and then ended up throwing more later on in the season. But then when he goes against Tennessee, I guess that does make sense. When that defensive line isn't getting any pressure, like they were, and they're usually, being the one that dictates the game so that Samson can obviously take over the game at that point, and it didn't happen. That makes more sense. I will say, too, though, that if Tennessee did apply that pressure, knowing Carson Beck's tendencies, he more than likely would have at least turned the ball over once. I can't say that he would have done it twice, but he's definitely turned the ball over once every single game. It's just unfortunate that he didn't do that in that Tennessee game. But check this out. So you guys obviously, you guys obviously can see the screen. You guys know what's on here now. According to the ESPN FBI matchmaker, and I thought that this was pretty interesting. They have the predictor at Ohio State 65.6% chance of winning this game, with obviously Tennessee finishing that out at 34.4%. And if you look at the last 5 games, this is stuff that people already know, but I kind of want to make sure that people understand college football is a game of momentum, and it's all in like how you're playing like right now. And I do think that does carry over, and I do think that we're not too far like removed from the last game of the season to reasonably say that there is a possibility that they can pick right back up where they left off. Now, that is unfortunate for Ohio State, if I were to be, transparent about that. But at the end of the day, it's just what it happened. So if you go down a list of Tennessee's last 5 games, you'll see that they played Kentucky. They obviously won that game 28-18. Mississippi State, 33-14. Georgia, obviously 31-17. UTEP 56-0. Vanderbilt 36-23. Flipping that on over to the other side, Ohio State's last 5 games. Penn State. Now, granted, top 5 team at that point. 2013, Purdue 45-0. What is that? Northwestern? Yes. Northwestern 31-7. Indiana, once again, another top 5 team, 38-15. And then obviously the unfortunate, turn of events for Ohio State at the end, losing, I think it was their 4th, correct? Their 4th game in a row to Michigan, 10-13.
Unfortunately, yeah, it was the 4th game in a row, and I'm kind of glad that you brought that up because it's one of those things where, there's been so much trolling going on here or there. It's like it seems like Buckeye fans are just not doing anything, and I was talking to one of my buddies. He's a Tennessee fan, of course, and he was like, you can't tell me that you ain't ever felt this type of energy from another fan base. And I'm like, Tennessee has a great fan base. Like, win or lose, they are always there. They always show up. I don't have any doubt about the fan base, but my honest opinion is I don't feel like I even want to troll Tennessee fans because I expect us to win a national championship. I don't. My vibe and my mood might be completely different if we would have beat Michigan, but right now Day needs to show me, like, you got enough talent to do it. Do we have question marks on the offensive line and maybe going to be rolling out some new players that haven't played that much this year in this game? Possibly. We don't know yet, but I think that Tennessee, I just think this game is going to be so close, and it's really going to come down to almost like a special teams battle. And that in itself, to me, is not something that I feel like I want to do because, touching back to the Michigan game, we missed 2 kicks, Cam. 2 kicks in that game that were chip shots that what did we lose the game by? 3. It's sad. You can't have such a talented team and come up short and not expect the fans to be mad about it when they expect perfection.
Kyle, and that's you were hurt, homie.
Huh?
I said you're hurt. I can feel it. I can feel it through the screen. But I mean, I understand why at the same time. I mean, I feel
bad. I feel bad for those seniors to a certain. I know how important winning that game is, And it's kind of crazy to kind of hear it be kind of talked down to a certain degree. But I understand both sides of it. I know that there's still a whole playoff road to go down. We could very well win a national championship. Whoever wins this game has the hardest path to doing that. So that in itself, if Day is able to do that, I think that alone corrects a lot of the wrongs that he's done, because he's got a gauntlet to go through, and that will be respected if he's able to do it. Real quick though, I have heard a rumor that he won't be fired, win or lose, but he possibly could be entertaining an NFL job.
Dang. Hey, I got a fun stat for you guys, kind of shifting our gears back to this game. Did you know that Ohio State is 3-0 at home against SEC teams? They've never lost a game at home against an SEC team. And then on the flip side, Tennessee is 0-24 against, or on the road against top 10 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the history of both programs, one team's either never won a game and the other team's never lost a game. So that's obviously going to change Saturday night. I just thought that was insane to kind of just throw out there. Now,
Man, it's just looking at Ohio State's schedule, it just makes me laugh. Yes, you played two quote-unquote top 5 teams, but Penn State I'll give to you. Penn State's been in the talks for the past couple of years. Yes, they're the third best team in the Big Ten. Now the fourth. Well, Michigan's out, so they're back up to the third. But Indiana, man, they played the bottom half of your division, and you exposed them. I think that Tennessee is very, very excited to be in the playoffs, one, and two, come to Ohio State, come to you guys and play. Our fan base is crazy, like you said before. Over 40% of your guys' tickets we bought. So there's going to be a lot of orange in that stadium. Yeah.
how did that happen?
A gracious Ohio State fan gave us the code to the season ticket holders. So
Serious? That's actually a real thing. That happened for real?
That's a real thing. But to touch on it, Kyle, I going through the trenches of being a Tennessee fan, I stopped talking shit. I have a Michigan fan friend that we always used to go back and forth when Tennessee in like 2015, 2016 was mediocre, but better than the average. And then the 2000, we'll say 17 to 19 season started, and I just had to shut my mouth. There was nothing good to say. Anytime he would come at me, I'd be like, "You're right, we suck." Like I just admit my faults, and you guys have always been in the talk. You guys have been in the playoffs within the past four playoffs. And I respect Ohio State. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I think this is going to be a fun time as a Tennessee fan to go back and play you guys.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I do think I respect Tennessee. I respect Tennessee's fans. I was actually telling somebody the other day that I'm glad that this is a good Tennessee team, because I feel like if we won this game, say back in a Dooley era or Pruitt era, it wouldn't.
Butch Jones, baby.
Well, I think he had 2 9-win seasons or something. So maybe one of those years it could have been entertaining. But I'm just glad that it is a good Tennessee team, and I know more or less. I think regardless of whatever Tennessee does this year, Tennessee fans are going to be happy with where their program's at. I've been told they're playing with house money right now. Like they win or lose, it doesn't matter. And with Ohio State fans, we've consistently been at the top. I think it's crazy. And I think from 2007 into 2020, I think Tennessee had 9 7-loss seasons or more. As far as I think they've had an 8-loss season in there. And I know all about that from being a fan. And it's Ohio State in school history has only had 2 7-loss seasons. So it's like Ohio State fans are looked at as being like these uppity, ungrateful, and it's like we just expect to see the best. Like if it's not perfection, 10-2 is not a good year, technically in the eyes of our fans. Like now, I try not to be so judgmental about Ohio State, but it's hard not to now, especially when players are getting paid, coaches are getting paid $10 million a year. Like they deserve the criticism. They don't deserve death threats and all these other things. Like, but it just
This is their
happens.
job. It's their job.
I also too, not to be so long winded, but I wanted to touch on you said something about our schedule, and to me our resumes I think pretty impressive. I know if you only watch Tennessee team or Tennessee and whoever Tennessee plays, and of course SEC football is entertaining to watch, but that's why I love college football. Like I enjoy watching football outside of just Ohio State. Like it, and to me, it's like when someone discounts our resume versus Tennessee's resume, it's just wild to me. Like I think Tennessee only has 3 wins over teams with a winning record. Like that and the rest of the teams that wins on their schedule, no good, no good. I think their total Tennessee's opponent's win-loss record is 72-78, and it's just there's just so many things. Like no one thought Indiana was going to be as good as they are this year, and that helped make our schedule look better. Or otherwise, I think we would be neck and neck right there with Tennessee's resume. But I
genuinely think we are though, Kyle, because on the last episode I spoke about our schedule and our losses. We play Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Alabama every single year. But coming into the season, I predicted 2 losses, and Arkansas was one of them. Arkansas is a dark horse team. They're just like Texas A&M. They're always just kind of slithering through. Nobody notices them until they're noticed. And Georgia, we lost. You guys lost to Oregon in a very close fashion. That was an enjoyable game to see. But the Michigan game was your Arkansas game. You weren't expecting to lose that game, but I mean it happened. So I think our resumes are pretty similar. I wasn't like discounting, but a lot of the Big Ten teams that they're playing right now are honestly not that good. I mean, Mississippi State's not good. Vanderbilt's okay now, but like if you look at the bottom of the barrel SEC teams, you're right, they're bad. But I think that the resumes are pretty similar this year. And I think it's a good matchup, but damn, did they give us a hard ass track to that playoff? Because if you guys win, you guys get to rematch against Oregon, and if we win, we have to play Oregon. Like they're the number 1 team, and I think they kind of got screwed too because as the number 1 seed, you should get the SMUs and the Boise States. You deserved it. You beat everybody, and you made your name. But instead, this is what they gave us, and I mean, I'm happy with it, honestly. Like you said, we're playing with house money. We have nothing to lose. I'll take making it to the playoffs this year and winning it next year if it happens. But I'll take getting out of the first round too. So we'll see what happens.
I'll tell you this. I think that I thought about something earlier that we just don't have enough time to break this down, but it would be interesting to actually analyze if we did. Because the schedules in terms of the outcomes of both teams and how they ended the seasons. If you were to flip the schedules, just high level here, we're not going to go through them one at a time. What would Ohio State's record be if they had Tennessee's schedule, in your opinion? And what would Tennessee's record be if they had Ohio State's schedule? I don't know who's going to start because we obviously don't have that pulled up right in front of us. I should probably just go ahead and pull that up. But at the same time, it's like, dude, what a question.
I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kyle. Okay, I'll go first. Honestly, I don't know. If we play Oregon at Oregon, Eugene is crazy to play at. But if Michigan comes to Neyland Stadium, I think that it's a different environment. It wouldn't, and I'm not talking about crowd or anything like that because the shoe is impressive. I'm talking about weather. I mean, it would have been a different ball game in general, and I think we would have swept the rest of the Big Ten teams that would have been put in front of us, Indiana included. I think we would have a one loss record against Oregon if you flip it.
Kyle, this is a little bit of a trick question for you, homie. Good luck.
So I feel like if you're comparing if Michigan comes like let's compare the Michigan game and the Florida, just because that those are rivalry games that means something. And if you know the history of the Ohio State Michigan game, we went on a crazy run of making it seem like that game kind of didn't matter, but the overall history of that series is normally the better team doesn't win. It's always the team that rushes for more yards, and we all know how good Michigan's been over the past 4 years at rushing the ball. But if I'm trying to say, I feel like Tennessee's game versus Florida, and it was a rivalry game, I would say that you weren't expecting to be going into overtime versus Florida in that game. I don't think you would have been. Even as talented as DJ Lagway is, and I feel like is going to be, I don't feel like you anticipated that game going the way it did. Y'all came out with a win, yes, but I don't want to sit here and be like label the Michigan game as it's a rivalry game and that's why it happened. It is what it is. But as far as like if Ohio State's playing Georgia, I don't know how many losses Ohio State would have if they had Tennessee's schedule. Like, would we have played Georgia pretty good? I don't know. Georgia's been so up and down. Bama's been so up and down. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. I just don't. I don't know. I don't think we would have lost to an Arkansas team, but I didn't think we were going to lose to Michigan either. So I feel like this year more than ever, it seems like there's not a top. If someone's going to say there's a top team, they'll say Oregon, because I guess they
didn't lose.
They stayed at number one. But to me, every team is capable of being beat. So I just think I could blurt off all kinds of resume stats and everything right here. I've got a whole paper full of them, but it won't matter because no one value the SEC conference more than they do Big Ten conference play. But at the end of the day, there's 4 Big Ten teams in the playoffs. There's only 3 in the SEC.
And Kyle, like you said, that's something that I enjoyed that you said was like this year's college football season was such a wild card, dude. We actually get ranked in the top 4, and then Arkansas beats us, Alabama loses, Ole Miss loses, I believe, like all in the same week, right? It was wild. But like in all honesty, what do you think your record would have been if you had our schedule?
I think we would have only had 1 loss, but then we probably would have been playing for the SEC championship game. And would that have been a rematch versus Georgia? Probably would have been. We probably would have had Tennessee played the second easiest schedule in the SEC this year. So, no, it's like Texas. Everybody talks about Texas playing the easiest schedule, but Tennessee's wasn't that far behind it. So, if you're asking me if are we playing a Georgia schedule, are we playing a Florida schedule? Because to me, normal years Tennessee playing Georgia and Bama, that's crazy. Like, especially
every year,
dominant as both of those teams have been. Bama's been dominant since 2012 up until 2020, and then Georgia took right off in their place. So, but both of those teams to me are down. Like, what would we have got them on a down night? Yeah, we would have beat them. Like, but I, I don't know. I think we would have lost one game. We would have been playing in the SEC championship. It's hard to beat a team twice. I don't know if we would have beat Georgia the second time around if that was the way it would have went. But
Have you beat Georgia at all? Like, just out of curiosity, I'm not trying to like throw a jab out there. I'm curious. Has Ohio State beaten Georgia before? Not in
in
the
school,
history under Ryan Day and Kirby Smart. At that.
you mean from the in the history? Just you just saying Ryan Day and Kirby Smart because they've only played once. But
Yeah.
that was it.
Beating them
That
twice potentially would be hard, but like the only reason why I asked that question is because I didn't recall them beating them once in general. That was my brain going nuts.
now, I'm not completely sure what our overall record is versus Georgia in school history. We might be 0-2 to them, maybe. I don't think we've had a win versus them.
That's interesting.
So I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm not necessarily saying that the one regular season loss would have been to Georgia. I don't know who it would have been. That's what I'm saying. It's like this college football schedule has just been so up and down, and even with Ohio State, it's like the weaker opponents. Yeah, did we handle business on the worst teams in the Big Ten? Yes, but people want to talk about the Nebraska game. Like Nebraska is one of those games that I said at the beginning of the year that just felt like a trap game, kind of like how Dusty said the Arkansas felt like a he thought that was going to be a loss, a trap game. I just we underperformed in that game, but the thing that's not talked about in that Nebraska game is that Nebraska has a top 20 defense, top 25 defense. Their offense might not have been as great, but still, Ohio State's went up against 6 top 25 defenses this year. So as good as Tennessee's offense has been and gets their top 10 offense, Ohio State has just as many touchdowns. They literally, I think Tennessee has 5,555 yards. They've also had 126 more snaps than us on offense. I'm just, when I really look at these teams and I put the numbers together, they're so similar that I think that when it comes to talking about the schedule, I think that it would either be replicated, only 2 losses, or only 1 loss. I know that took a long time to get there, but we got
You're good, man. You're good. And as much as I want to like really dive into like individuals and then obviously give like our key, takeaways as to what needs to happen in order for Ohio State or Tennessee to pull this off, I want to make sure that I kind of lead it at this. This is just something I noticed with both y'all's responses. It seemed like Dustin was very quick to answer what he thought that his record would be if they had flipped schedules, which I think does tend to play a role in how he obviously views the Big Ten, and I think most would obviously agree with that. I think it took you a little bit longer, Kyle, to obviously, kind of figure out, who would we lose to, what that record would be, would we lose, multiple games? Like it took you a minute to obviously come to that conclusion. I will say we can get real granular and we can say that all these players go to the SEC and championships and all that, whatever. The point is that Ohio State, I don't feel like, and this is something that I think I've expressed to you before, Kyle, I don't think that Ohio State has to get up every single week for most of their games. And so like it's very easy to just be like, kind of take a day off or half a day off or half a game off or a quarter off. Like if you're in the SEC and you play Bama one week, then you play Georgia the next week, then you play Florida the next week, it's like you can't like take that off. Like you absolutely have to. So I will say in your defense, Kyle, if you ever got like approached with that question, like I would say something along the lines of like, I think Ohio State, we haven't seen the best version of them yet. Personally, I don't think we've seen the best version of Tennessee yet either, especially offensively. But defensively, I think they're getting close. I think we can all agree on that one. But I think if Ohio State did have Tennessee's schedule, it would be we would more than likely, because they wouldn't have a choice, we would more than likely see and understand more of what Ohio State is exactly this year. Because I do think if we were to compare the teams, aside from looking at the statistics, it's easier to see that Tennessee, I feel like, is more established from like an identity perspective on both sides of the ball for the most part, just because of that reason, if that makes sense. And so it's like Ohio State might be more tested because they go against defenses that are top 25 and, and like, et cetera. But I think like it's just the old argument. You know how it is. Everybody says that the SEC is cannibalism. And it's like if you were to throw even half of the SEC into the ACC and then the other half into the Big Ten, I think that at the end of the day, we would have ultimately more SEC teams in the playoffs than there are at this very moment. I do think, without getting off track, there are several teams in the playoffs right now just because of how, discombobulated the formatting is. I don't think need to be in there, not because I'm an SEC homer or anything like that. I'm not. And that's, at the end of the day, like everybody's a rival to Florida. Let's just be honest. I just think that like teams like Ole Miss, teams like Alabama, even though they've been up and down, and then you have South Carolina who came on hot at the end of the year. I think that would just be like more entertaining to kind of watch those games against other conference, elites like a Penn State, like a Clemson, I guess, if you want to call them elite. Those types of games, then a SMU or what is it? SMU in who are they playing? Indiana or Notre Dame?
Notre Dame.
So it's like, in my opinion, dude, it's like unless you're a fan of those legitimate teams or if you're just a fan of college football, nobody really wants to watch that game. Especially when later on, like you have Ohio State and Tennessee, like that's the type of game that you want to watch. That game. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to see the SMU Notre Dame, in my opinion. Like, can we agree with that? Like, I mean, you can love football and watch it just because you enjoy it, but can we agree on it?
I agree.
Like, would you rather watch Notre Dame and South Carolina?
I kind of want to see Notre Dame versus Indiana just because to me, it's entertaining to me regardless. Would I like to see Notre Dame versus South Carolina? Yeah, that'd be entertaining. But South Carolina lost games that they shouldn't have, and that's the real argument, Cam, that needs to be talked about when we're talking about SEC teams. Is I haven't heard losses mean more than anything this year, and that's what SEC fans have been preaching all year long. Is this loss and this loss and this loss is better than that team, and this loss is better than this conference. And like I said, we could go on and on. I could give you. I don't like to cross compare games, like say for instance Vandy and Georgia State, and then you got a Vandy fucking turns around and beats Bama. Like I don't see how you can really kind of gauge how good a conference is when it's so up and down. And I just if SEC teams are ranked based off of recruiting, and that's how most of this stuff works, and everything revolves around who you bring in. There's no doubt that the SEC brings in more 4 and 5 stars. Ohio State brings in the majority of 4 and 5 stars for the whole Big Ten conference. But the thing is, there's still, and the Big Ten develops players, and regardless if they are a 3-star or 5-star, we've all had a 3-star on our team that has way outperformed a 5-star.
Yeah.
If you take and stick, I think, Ohio State in the SEC, is it going to be challenging from a more of a talented roster standpoint? Of course, but Ohio State would arguably be the second to third best roster in that conference. I might put Texas and Georgia above them because I'm pretty sure they got more 4 and 5 stars right now. But I don't like to base everything off of recruiting because with Ohio State's schedule, there's some games that you can watch and they'll they're not performing to what the expectations are of everybody, and everybody has high expectations for Ohio State. The media, everybody. If we're down 7 points or 10 points in a game, I get text messages saying, "Oh God, like, like, slow down, y'all." Like, there's a
I'm
lot
sure
of football
Dustin did too
play.
with the
Uh,
Vanderbilt game. I'm sure Dustin did as well with that. But here, listen,
I,
guys, let's dive into this real quick. We know that the stats are pretty comparable. If you look at Nico Imaliava and then obviously Will Howard, obviously those stats are fairly comparable. I think Howard has. It looks like Howard has 2,860 yards passing, and then Nico has 2,512 yards passing. Nico has 19 touchdowns. Howard has 27. Howard has 8 interceptions. Nico has 5. The clear difference that I see here, though, is that it looks like, and this could be because obviously Howard's a little bit more experienced. Howard has, it looks like 314 passes overall, attempts, and 227 completions. But Nico's not far away. He's at 303 attempts for 199 completions. I think, like, from a passing perspective, like, if Nico's on, if we're just going to break it down position by position, not lines and stuff like that, we're talking about key contributors. Let's start with the quarterbacks here. If Nico, and I'll just go ahead and just say this, like, if Nico's on, bro, like, it could be a challenge, but this isn't my battle. I'm gonna, hey, this is where we like kind of put the wraps on, throw the gloves on. Let's talk about it. Like, let's legitimately compare the quarterbacks. Who we taking? Obviously, let's not be biased. Let's be realistic.
If Nico is on his game, he can run the ball. He can definitely throw the ball. There's not just one target. Thornton just happened to be the hottest, longest catching wide receiver this year. But I mean, our whole wide receiving core is stacked. Thornton has the biggest stats, and I mean, Ohio State does have some great receivers, but I won't touch on that. I'll let Kyle talk about his team.
We'll
But
get
I
to the
mean,
receivers in a minute. Or you want to like compare the quarterback
if
and who's taking it home in this one? Who has to have the better game in order for their team to win?
Nico has to have the better game, of course, and Kyle's going to say his quarterback does. But I mean, Nico has to be on his feet. He has to think on his feet. If he sees an open pocket with 20 yards in front of him, he has to take it. He can't hesitate once. And if he sees an option and that's not open, he has a split second to go to his second option, and even a smaller window to go to his third. So I mean, he's just got to be. His IQ has to be at the top of the game to be a part of this game. There cannot be many mistakes because, as all of us know, the team that makes the least mistakes wins the game.
And Kyle, before you take off, Dustin, let me finalize this for you. So you're obviously saying Nico has to have a better game. Over under 200 yards passing for Nico.
I'm gonna say right under 200 yards of passing because the rest is gonna be on the ground.
Okay. All right. Over under 2 touchdowns passing. In order for Nico to have a good game and in order for Tennessee to win this game.
Over 2 touchdowns passing.
Okay. So under 200 yards passing, but over 2 touchdowns in order for Tennessee to.
Yep. Those quick red zone touchdowns, that quick fade, that quick slant. We've just got to be on our game.
Kyle, I'm going to flip it to you. Obviously, let's compare the quarterbacks from your perspective, and then obviously I'll follow it up with these questions because I'm curious as to your answers. But my question for Howard for you is going to be a little bit different. So hit me with yours. Yeah. What's your thoughts?
the question is, what does Will Howard have to do to perform? Like, repeat the question to me one more time.
Yeah.
I'm
So
sorry.
like in your opinion, like compare the two quarterbacks, right? Let's just start with that. Start there. Compare the two quarterbacks, and then arguably like I'll get to the next part.
There's no doubt that Nico is the more talented quarterback. You can watch the arm strength that he has, the way that he can rope that ball and drop it down. There's no doubt that he is very talented when it comes to slinging the football around. There's a reason why he was the number one quarterback in this class, right? I think that there's been moments with Nico where he is overthrown and been off slightly. And then there's also been moments where he's been on the money and the receiver drops the ball. When he said that something that I'm worried about when it comes to Nico, and it's happened to us in the Penn State game, it happened to us in the Oregon game, is if Nico can run his leg, he is sneaky fast, and agile. And I'm more worried about his legs than his arm. Maybe I should be more worried about his arm, but I just have faith in our secondary. I'm more worried about his legs. As far as Howard goes, Howard is extremely efficient when throwing the football. Anywhere from 20 to 25 yards, 30 yards, he's pretty efficient. We haven't really had too many deep shots. That's the thing I feel like that if he's able to hit some deep shots, we're cooking. But he's not done it too many times, so I'm not saying I expect it. We haven't really seen Howard run that much either. That's something that I heard all the time, that, he's going to be running the ball more. Now, he ran the ball quite a bit more than he has all year in the Penn State game, and it worked. I just think Tennessee's defense has, I believe, 93 tackles for loss. So it's going to be, is he able to get rid of this ball? Are we able to game it up to where he has the throws? I think that Will Howard, I know you're going to ask me some questions about yardage, I'm sure, of course. Or were you?
Yeah, let's just go ahead and get there real quick, right? Because we got two more positions before I crack into the defense, and then we're going to go into a score prediction. The Will Howard, over under 200 yards passing.
I'm going to say over, just because I feel like we have to win this game.
Okay. And then over under 2 touchdowns. Passing, not rushing.
I believe he goes over 2 passing touchdowns. I think Ibuka is going to get one, and I think I want to say Tate's going to get one. So yes,
that's interesting. So listen to y'all. So we got under 200 yards passing for Nico, but yet still over 2 touchdowns, or right at 2 touchdowns passing for Nico, right? And then you got over 200 yards passing for Howard, and at least right at or over. You're saying that Howard has to do, he has to hit two passing touchdowns in order for.
I would say push on that. He'll hit 2.
Okay, so if that ends up being the case, I'm really curious as to what your all's thoughts are on this running back room then, because this is where I feel like both teams make their money. And this is where both teams have made their money all year. And so we got touchdowns already on the board if we're looking at just the quarterbacks. Right? Going against defenses that are supposedly really elite. And I don't want to say supposedly, but they are. But we already got points. So now you have to really start thinking about what these running backs are going to have to do and what they more than likely will do. So, Dustin, let's start with you. Obviously, I know that both, Tennessee and Ohio State, I know they have running backs by committee. I get it. But I'm only going to bring up one running back on each team. I'm not going to bring up the committee. All right? And I'm going to go with the hot hand, at least the leading stats, for these two teams. Dylan Sampson, obviously, has a stat line of 256 carries, 1,485 yards, and 22 touchdowns. He's obviously been a key indicator in almost every single win that Tennessee's, come on top of, in those games. Over, under 200 yards.
I'll say, I'm going to say under 200 yards. He's averaged 100 yards a game. But every game this season except one, he's scored a rushing touchdown. So I'm gonna say right under 200 yards of rushing.
Now hear me out. The question is, what needs to be done?
What needs to be done is our offensive line needs to block, and Sampson needs to be hungry enough to get past those that aren't blocked.
Right. He needs to be. Hear me out. If Dylan Sampson is averaging a little over 100 yards a game, and they're winning those games. But yet this game is supposedly going to be a little bit tighter. And when those games are tight, Dylan Sampson typically takes off, right?
Yeah.
And he takes ownership of these games. I guess a better question would be over under 200 for Dylan Sampson in order for Tennessee to win this game.
I think he can win it with under 200 rushing yards.
Ooh, we'll get to that here in a moment. That's a good. All right. Hey, you shut me down. Good job. So, all right. Over under 2 rushing touchdowns.
Over.
Ooh. Okay. So just so we're clear, let me recap on this. You have Nico at least 2 touchdowns, and you have Dylan Sampson at 2 touchdowns. That's 28 points automatically right there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Just making sure we're on the same page, because I don't. That's tough, man. Ohio State's defense is pretty elite. And now, granted, if we were to flip the script on over to you, obviously, Kyle, the leading, the season leader for your all's team in terms of rushing yards is obviously Quinshon Judkins. Okay. He obviously has a stat line of 147 carries, 805 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Now, I understand that doesn't look like it's, as comparable to Dylan Sampson, but I also understand that Ohio State tends to have more of a running back by committee process within their offensive scheme than Tennessee does. So I'll make sure to give that to you in all fairness. So it's very hard for me to essentially ask you this question, but because he is obviously leading your team in rushing yards, I'm going to kind of lower the standard a little bit because Tennessee has one guy that is technically taking over most of the game when he's in. Since I know that Ohio State alternates, I'm going to ask you, over or under for Judkins? 165 yards.
So, I've actually kind of thought, I had some kind of thought that something like this would be asked. I don't think Judkins is, I think he's going to be under that. I actually think the best running back will be Travion Henderson in this game for us. I think he will have the most yards. I think we have to hit 150 yards or more to win this game. As far as the rushing attack goes, like if you want to take both of our duo stats and put them together, yes, they're better than Sampson's, but that kind of sounds silly to say that 2 guys are better than 1 guy. But what I mean by that is I'm happy about that because both our guys' legs are fresh. They've only had a little over 100 attempts themselves, when I think Sampson's had like 256 attempts.
Yeah.
So I think Sampson's a great running back. But I think that I'm glad that our running backs have fresh legs.
Just in all fairness, too, I know Tennessee does have another running back that they do rotate in. It's just he's a little bit younger. I understand that. But he's also a difference maker when he's in. The dude runs the ball hard. I just can't, for some reason, I can't remember his name, but I can see his face, and I can
Lewis.
see he has the dreads.
Lewis.
So I know when I watch him play, that dude runs angry. So it's like
the Carnes boy.
Yeah,
the Carnes. Yep.
He's a good running back, man. I don't really say that lightly because I'm a very big critique of that position specifically. But I do think if I were to just say now that we've established now the quarterbacks and now the running backs, okay, you're looking at Tennessee, according to you, Dustin, in order for them to win this game, Nico has to – he doesn't have to throw over 200 yards, in your opinion, to win this game. But he does at least have to score 2 passing touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Dylan Sampson, you don't think that he has to rush for over 200 yards either because historically throughout the season he hasn't done so. But he has to have at least 2 touchdowns as well, right? So we're on the same page there. So we're looking at 28 points there, and we've only covered 2 positions. Kyle, Howard, you said in order for Ohio State to win this game, Howard has to push 200. And he also has to push 2 touchdowns passing. We didn't even touch on the rushing touchdowns for either or because at the end of the day, I think both of these players have a very similar tale where both fan bases have been told all season, well, they just got to run the ball. They just got to run the ball as the quarterback. And then it's like when it happens, they've found success, but it doesn't really happen that much for either team. So that's the reason why I decided I'm going to exclude that. This will more than likely be the game that one of them is, if not both, will probably end up rushing the ball more than they've done all year. That's yet to be seen, especially when you consider the defenses and how stout those fronts are. But Kyle, Judkins, you think that Henderson is actually going to be better than Judkins in this specific matchup, but you also took the under for 165 yards for Judkins. If I were to just then, if you think that Henderson's going to be the better one before I combine all your points here, how would you put push or over under 165 for Henderson?
I would say even Henderson would be under 165. Or I think that both running backs combined, as long as we get over 150 yards and one touchdown, I think that's what we need.
Okay, so with yours, then you're looking at a minimum of 2 passing touchdowns, and you're looking at least a rushing touchdown. That puts you at 28-21. All right. I'm not even going to go wide receivers at this very moment because I think that both teams just have a just insane amount of talent on the outside. Let's just be realistic about that. And besides, we already gave away we think that Nico's going to throw for 2 touchdowns. Howard's going to throw for 2 touchdowns. So ideally, we would really just be deciding who would be receiving those touchdowns, right? And we kind of already touched base on that a little bit. So it's not like I don't want to fully exclude them because I do think that because of the talent in those positions, they're still going to be key factors, especially if they involve them in the runs and jet sweeps and things like that I know both teams like to do every now and again. But there has to be a clear difference. And in my opinion, I have to just ask so that I know where you guys are coming from. Is it special teams that's going to make up the difference in this game after the fact, or is it going to be defense? And let me just start with you, Kyle. Go ahead. Special teams or defense, man? What makes up the difference now that we know the stats for both the running backs?
So, for Ohio State, it needs to be the special teams. We need to be able to make field goals, but I don't want to be in that position again. I don't want the game to come down to a field goal. I don't want our team to be settling for field goals. We need to be scoring touchdowns. I think we have a great defense, and I think the defense is going to show up, and I hope it shows up more to the point to where the kicking game's not even a factor. Because if it comes down to the kicking game, I would give Tennessee the nod in that aspect because I'm just not confident in our special teams. There's aspects of the special teams that I think we could take advantage of, but not in kicking.
Okay, so here's the easiest way to answer this. Defensive turnovers that transition into points, but we'll start with the turnover part. Ohio State has to have over or under 2 turnovers in order to win this game.
Well, they have the number 1 scoring defense, so the odds would be in our favor. I think that it's hard. I'm not really good at predicting things like this, so I'm really kind of just spitballing.
That's what makes it so much fun.
Yeah. As far as I think that I could see our defense generating a strip sack fumble, or making Nico fumble the ball. He's fumbled the ball 8 times this year, and I know he's lost 4 of them. So as much as I don't want his legs to get after us, and I think could be a problem, if he does take off and run, he's capable of putting that ball on the ground. If he stays in that pocket too long, he's capable of getting strip sacked and that ball's on the ground. So I don't know if there's going to be any defensive touchdowns scored. I don't really think there are, but I think that Nico will fumble it. There will at least be 1 fumble in the game. I think it'll be Nico, but it could be Samson. Although the 4 games that Samson has fumbled in, his turnovers didn't affect the outcomes of that game. So I would really rather it be Nico. But as far as interceptions go, I think they're going to try to attack Davidson Igbinosa. He has been the most penalized DB all season. If Nico can throw back shoulder throws to Thornton downfield or Brew downfield and get Igbinosa in that position, he's going to draw a flag, and they're going to be able to march the ball down the field. So I think that he can come up with an interception, though. But really, across the board, the secondary from Jordan Hancock, Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom, all of them are very talented and more than able to get an interception. But I think we come away with 2 takeaways versus this Tennessee offense.
And just so you know, this does go hand in hand with the special team question. Because just because you generate a turnover, I understand that doesn't transition into points, right? They could get a pick and then they could easily just get tackled right there. But depending on where they get tackled, if the offense obviously can't generate any points, you'll understand why I'm about to ask the special teams question that I think you're anticipating here in a moment. But Dustin, flipping it on over to you, man. Defensively speaking, for Tennessee, over under 2 turnovers. Kyle, mute.
Over 2 turnovers. Our defense has proven over and over in key points of the game on the goal line. Interception against Alabama, a fumble. They have to. At least 2 turnovers. They've proven themselves over and over. They've given me no reason to doubt. Even when I'm doubting, I'm just like, give me something. And then I look up and we've picked off the ball. Our secondary's pretty nice with it. Forced fumbles, it's not been anything spectacular, but against Oklahoma at the 1-yard line, just ripping that ball out and grabbing it, it's like they've saved our lives too many times. And I was worried about that 17-year-old kid at Alabama, but like I told you before, we shut that kid down right away. McCoy was right on his game. I don't think we're too inclined in causing too many penalties on the pass interference side of things, but offsides. Offsides has murdered us, and just watching that Georgia game over and over and over, offsides, it killed me. I was like, "Come on, guys! You guys are supposedly like an elite defense this year, and those mistakes killed us. So that's something that we have to stay on par with, is staying on your side of the line of scrimmage until that ball is snapped and putting pressure, because if you put pressure, mistakes are made. And hey, Kyle's right, man. Nico, if he is pressured, he doesn't even see it coming. That ball gets smacked out of his hand. He has to hold on to the ball. But our defensive side of it, James Pierce has to get past his man. Our whole defensive line does. Our secondary has to be on point, and 2 turnovers at least to win this game.
All right, so you both have 2 turnovers. We have obviously. I'm compiling all this up. I don't think you guys are aware of this, because I think it's really interesting to kind of get a final score prediction just based off what you feel might happen, because there are a lot of variables that go into it. But I also think it's really cool to kind of ask these questions, because in a roundabout way, you kind of answer the question automatically, right? So it's cool to kind of look at it like that. So the final question that goes hand in hand with the special teams: 6 points or 10 points? So you have 3, 0, 6, or 10. What one has to happen on special teams in order to win this game? Whoever wants to go first.
What do you mean 10 points, Cam?
10 points, because both you guys said two turnovers. If the points were generated off these. Now, this is a hypothetical, because this is obviously a situation that no points could be generated off any turnover.
Hey,
right?
I'll be happy, Cam, if we get those 2 turnovers, if they turn into 2 field goals, I'm okay with that.
So you're going to take the 6, because the 10 is a field goal and a touchdown.
I'll take 6 out of our turnovers.
Okay, so 2 turnovers. You think if that happens, and in order for Tennessee to win the game, it has to equate to at least 6 points. At least.
Yep.
6.
At least.
Kyle, same question for you, bro.
So I don't necessarily know if the turnovers are going to equal into points. I think that if those turnovers do come, I think they're going to come in the red zone situation. Ohio State has the number 1 red zone defense. I think that Tennessee's going to either try to run the ball with Sampson, or possibly pass to one of those tight ends like it seems like they like to do when they get into that red zone situation. So I anticipate it happening somewhere around the red zone. I don't think there's really going to be any points that get generated off of them. If there is, I would say 2 field goals. So I'll go 6 points.
6 points. So again, like I mentioned, we know that there's no guarantee that when you have a turnover that's going to generate points for the other. I get that. But we also know that turnovers play a big role in these types of games. And generally, if a team is able to generate some points off of a turnover, the odds of that team winning the game in this type of game is really high, right? Because generally these games are pretty close. So if you're going to say 6 points and he's going to say 6 points, and I've combined all of the supposeds. Now, again, this is high level. This isn't granular. We're not taking deep dive into this, right? High level. What do you think the final score would be based off the amount of points you think the quarterbacks, the running backs, the defense, and special teams? What's the final score you think? Because I got it right here.
42 on my side.
Now, I took the bare minimums, by the way. So if I say 2 over under, then it's like I just took 2. So
I think with the points that I have that we've stated so far, it would put us at 27. But I think that my overall score prediction for Tennessee is going to be 24 points. So I think it's going to be a field goal margin.
So the final score based off high level, 2 touchdowns, quarterback, running back, off turnovers is Tennessee 34, Ohio State 27. Isn't that crazy how that works? I think that's pretty realistic. I don't know if that's exactly what's going to happen, but y'all said it's going to be a closer game. Do you think it's going to be closer than that?
No, I think that's pretty accurate, Cam. On either side. On either side, I'd say that's very accurate.
Has anybody scored more than 30 points against Ohio State this year, aside from Oregon?
I don't believe anybody. I don't think anybody has. Indiana scored, I think, 15. I think Penn State only scored 10 or 17. So, no, we haven't allowed 30 points this year. And I don't think Tennessee's actually beat a FBS team with a winning record this year by 30 points. They haven't scored 30 points or more either. So I don't know. I like I said, I think the final score is going to end up being the way that I view it's going to end up being 27-24. And I hope that doesn't come down to us having to kick that field goal late. I hope it's just one of those situations where we're up and we can just run the ball out, you know.
Or just an early field goal at the beginning of the game, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
No pressure in that way. Let's do this, man. I had fun with this, but I know that we've been on here for a hot minute now. So like you obviously, is that your final score, Kyle?
Yeah.
27, 24?
My phone's about to die, so I'm probably gonna have to plug it up real quick.
That's totally fine. And then, hey, Dustin, man, hit me with your final score, and then what I'll do is I'm going to shock you both with my own prediction here.
I think honestly, 35-28 us.
Ooh, man. So somewhere Tennessee goes for 2 if we win. I'm just kidding. I've been going back and forth with this. Like I mentioned, I don't really have a bark in this fight. I think both teams are really good. I think both teams are good on the defensive side of the ball. I do need to know what Nico shows up, because I have all the confidence in the world in Samson, and I have all the confidence in the world in Ohio State's running back by committee, despite everyone wanting to put a lot of emphasis on the 2 injured players that they have along the offensive line. I just think Ohio State's recruited at a good enough level where it's essentially like a plug and play. I don't really think that that's going to play that much of a factor. Even though Tennessee's defensive line is extremely good, I I've been going back and forth, and maybe you guys can help me out on this. I still am going to stick with my final score prediction that I have in my head. But the thing that's getting me caught up right now is Nico playing on the road, because he just doesn't have the best history thus far playing road games. It's like I can have confidence in Tennessee's defense, and I can have confidence in Tennessee's running game, and I can have confidence in Tennessee's offense overall if Nico utilizes his legs. Right? And they get him more comfortable. They roll him out. They do those short to intermediate passes, and then he's able to connect on those deep balls. I think it could get really, really interesting if I'm a Tennessee fan and all of those things happen in a perfect world, especially on the road. You start quieting down that stadium. But flipping it on over to Ohio State, I just think that it is a home game. They've had 7 or 8 noon games for a long time. This is something that they've been looking forward to a lot lately with wanting to play this night game. I think that from a quarterback perspective, and I think, Kyle, you know this, I've been mentioning this to you all year, I'm not the biggest fan personally of Howard. I don't think that he's really that big of a game breaker, difference maker type of quarterback. I think he's good enough to obviously sustain drives and complete those shorter to intermediate passes. I just don't think that if the game was on the line and he's unable to run the ball with and utilize his legs, because again, I know he's not notoriously known for that, and they force him to actually pass the ball and generate some explosive plays, he might generate 1 or 2. Can't say that would make the difference, because if I look at the offenses side by side from an explosive perspective, for some reason, despite Ohio State having playmakers on the outside, if Nico's on, I feel like Tennessee would be able to generate more explosive plays. And I think that that's kind of hard for me to say, because I really don't want either one of you to win.
Go Vols, baby.
To be honest. But man, this is going to be tough. In my opinion, I think it's really going to boil down to special teams and turnovers. I think the offenses are going to be pretty similar to each other. But again, if Nico decides that he's going to turn it on and actually connect on those passes, bro, you got to understand, Nico was several passes away from blowing out Alabama. Several incomplete passes away that he overthrew from blowing Florida out as well. Several incomplete passes away, of overthrowing the ball from it, keeping that Georgia game potentially closer, maybe even actually beating Georgia. I'm not going to go as far, because that game obviously was still two touchdowns or more. But really, it's not that the offensive play calling for Tennessee has been bad. Those plays have been there. Heupel's drew it up perfectly. It's just Nico hasn't been able to execute it. And then when Nico is uncomfortable, it's like they go to plan B, that being Samson. And Samson's able to kind of see it through. And I think really, Kyle, man, I've been going back and forth with this for a while, because you know how I am about Tennessee, bro. You know how I am about Tennessee. I think the biggest factor in this game, in my opinion, is going to be who's more physical. And because they're just so easily comparable. And I think if I've watched both teams, and I've watched every single game, and if Ohio State shows up in the physical format like I know they can, and like I've seen, because they got those playmakers, they got the size, length, width, everything, man, speed, then it's going to be a lot closer in my mind at that point, because then they're going to be able to put pressure on, Nico, so that they can force him to be uncomfortable. But if he doesn't, if in my opinion, I think Tennessee is going to show up, be extremely physical, and I think that if Ohio State can't match it and Nico's on, bro, it could get dangerous, even with it being at home. And I have to ask you, because I know you're one of the most realistic fans I've ever talked to, when it comes to Ohio State football. Are these things that you've heard of that are valid in your opinion as to what could potentially be the difference in this game? And then I'll give you my final score prediction after your thoughts.
So to me, I think those points are definitely valid. If Nico's able to hit downfield passing, if Samson's able to run, if we have to load the box to try to stop Samson and it's still not working, then that leaves them able to connect on some downfield passes, and it could get ugly. It could definitely get ugly. I think as well as you can sit there and say it could get ugly for us, I think it could get ugly for them as well. Cam, I think that really this game's going to come down to penalties. Um, Tennessee's had so many penalties this year. I think they've had 93 on the year, and that ranks them at like 129th out of 134 teams. And Ohio State has only had 52 penalties, the least penalized team out of the 12 teams in the playoffs. I think that's going to be a big thing in this game. I think playing on the road in the shoe, regardless if there's 40,000 Vols fans there, 30,000 Vol fans there, whatever might be there, whatever, who shows up, that's still going to be a hard place to play. And Tennessee has struggled on the road this year. I think false starts are going to be a problem. I think if we go on a silent count, that we could get them to jump off sides just like they've shown they've done before. There's a lot of ways that we can win this game. They can put McCoy on Smith, but there's still Emeka Ibuka. There's still Carnell Tate. There's Brandon Dennis. There's G. Scott. There's Henderson can catch the ball into the backfield. Judkins can catch the ball into the backfield. You can't double team nobody on this offense. You're going to leave somebody wide open. And if we can execute and the game call, the play calling's up to T, and it's Day drops him his nuts. I would be afraid if I was a Tennessee fan, but I don't. I could see why, off of our last performance, why most Tennessee fans are doing what they are doing now or feel the way that they do. Not to take away that I think they do have a good team, but I just think that this game it really would be different if we had a win over Michigan this year. I think it would be a lot different. I would feel a lot different. I still feel like we're going to win this game, but I'm not trying to get into the whole hoorah trolling aspect of everything. Like, I just want to see a win, Cam.
I've been going back and forth with it because what I mentioned, there's just too many what ifs. If this, if that. And I think it's funny because y'all had mentioned this earlier in the show. It's like the games, like there's not really been an elite team, like legit all year. Even Oregon struggled, against Boise State and whatnot. And so it's like, but Oregon's obviously been the more complete team. I wouldn't say elite, but they've been the more complete team. I just think that if I've watched Tennessee play, for some reason, aside from that Georgia game, because I don't know, that wasn't the same Tennessee team that I seen all year. And I don't even want to defend Tennessee because I don't like Tennessee. I don't like Ohio State either. You know that. It's like it's like I look at it like if I were to just zoom out, Tennessee's played more consistently as a unit. And if I were to just leave it with a final score prediction, I think that I'm not going to sit here and say that I think Nico officially takes off. That's just a scenario that I think. I think Ohio State's defense is good enough to stop it. And again, Nico doesn't perform well on the road. But I do think Tennessee's defense is good enough to slow down Ohio State's offense. I really do. I think if Ohio State generates any points, it's more than likely going to be from a wide receiver perspective. Maybe some jet sweeps and things like that. Quick slant passes that possibly turn into some explosive passes or explosive plays. I don't think that Howard's going to be the one to take that game over from that perspective. So long story short, man, this has been tough. I'm going to not say that Nico takes off in this game. I do think that he's going to be a little bit more above average than what he's been. Give me, though, excuse my language. Oh, this is so tough. I act like I got some pride and all this stuff invested in this. Give me Give me Tennessee 27-20. I'm going to take Tennessee 27-20 just based off what I've seen. And I just feel like, and I'll leave it at this on my end, I just feel like Nico's been this close all year. And if he doesn't take, and if this isn't the game and they end up losing this game because he still couldn't connect and Samson wasn't enough, then by all means, whatever, there's next year. But for some reason, there's just something telling me that Heupel's had enough time to do whatever he's got to do to make him comfortable enough to where he might not be the main reason why Tennessee would win this game. There could be a multitude of other factors. But I think that all it takes for Tennessee to just bust this thing wide open that they've unfortunately not been able to do all year is just that one or two play that's explosive that he's missed. And if he's able to connect on one or two of those, and dude, we have not seen Tennessee. And this is kind of what freaks me out a little bit. We haven't seen Tennessee and how they react when he hits on those plays. I don't know what the hell that's going to do to that defense. I don't know what the hell that's going to do to the whole morale of that program, like that team as a whole. You know for a fact that they respect that dude. You know for a fact that they're supporting him and they're encouraging him and they're like, dude, it sucks that you've missed on these passes. That sucks. But the day it happens, and if it happens in an environment like this, bro, it might, like, dude, it gives me chills and I'm not even a fan. Because I would hope that would be the case for my team, and if I would hope that would be the case for Ohio State as well. And I can't say for Ohio State, based off what I've seen all year, that there's that one thing that they're missing. I really can't. Like, it's just hard for me to predict, like, on Ohio State, because I feel like Ohio State's consistent in a lot of ways, but I don't think that they're consistently explosive. And I think that this is just a bad matchup, in my opinion, for Ohio State from an explosive perspective. And then if you think about, like, Oregon, like, if Tennessee does advance potentially and they play Oregon, like, bro, I'm changing my entire perspective because Oregon can match. They can go tit for tat, explosiveness, in my opinion, offensively. I can't say that Ohio State confidently can go tit for tat explosive wise. I know that was long drawn out, but like, it just, like, there's something in my mind that's just telling me that I can't see it.
I know that I just feel like we've played explosive teams. If in my opinion, I think Oregon has a more explosive pass game. I definitely think Tennessee has a better rushing game, but Oregon's wide receivers are, I think, more talented than Thornton. Really, Tennessee's wide receiver core. I mean, didn't Thornton come from Oregon?
Yeah,
came from Oregon. Yep.
Yeah, so
you were gonna say that.
I don't know how long's he been at Tennessee? I'm not exactly sure, but 2 years. Okay, so I think he's talented. I think he could. I wouldn't be surprised if he catches a deep ball on us and takes one to the house. I think that we've matched up pretty well to the teams that you can consider explosive. We've matched up really well to teams that are comparable to Tennessee. And I reference Penn State as, I think, very comparable to Tennessee. There's definitely some things Tennessee's better at. But their defense, they're really comparable. There's some things on offense that Aller's able to throw that deep ball. He's accurate with that deep ball. And we didn't let it hurt us in that game. We let it hurt us in the Oregon game. And that's very possible that Tennessee can connect and it's going to hit on some of these passes. And then, gosh, you can't stop the run. You can't stop the pass. So what do? That's a bad situation. But I have confidence in this defense. I have more confidence in the defense than I do the offense, of course. But I really think that Will Howard has played really good this year. I think he had 327 yards passing versus Oregon. And he's more than capable of doing that versus Tennessee. Will he? We don't know. He's had a lot of games this year to where he's turned the ball over in situations that could have blown the scores of games wide open. Um, and it comes down to him. Is he going to make the stupid mistake of fumbling the ball into the end zone or sliding and not knowing the time management? I don't put that all on him. That goes on Day and Chip and everybody else on the coaching staff. But he's part of it too. Just the quarterback gets all the praise. They get all sometimes they get all the negative stuff that even's not their fault. But there's Will Howard. I don't want Will Howard to be the one that has to win this game, but he kind of has to, and I think he is a good enough quarterback to do it.
That goes hand in hand with really what I was thinking. It's like if I had to put the game on Will Howard's back to win this, knowing that he's not generally known for explosiveness, like generating those explosive plays, it's like hard for me to see it. Also, when I knew you were going to bring up Oregon, I guess the only thing I was thinking about Oregon is that they played Ohio State and they played Penn State, which Penn State's pretty physical in their own right. But I don't think still, despite Oregon being undefeated, I don't think Oregon's as physical, or I don't think like maybe at their best they could match Tennessee. I just think that Tennessee's a really physical team, dude. Like I think that like they're going to be pretty physical, and if you combine that physicality with the possibility of Nico, like since him being he's been like I said, man, this close in like literally every game from like busting the floodgates wide open, and it's like I'm scared for Ohio State for that reason because if he doesn't do it, then I think the game will be a lot closer, and I think Will Howard will have a better chance at actually generating the playmakers that he has. But if he does do it, I don't think Ohio State has enough offensive power. That's kind of where I'm at. That's the reason why I said 27-20 because like I think Nico could connect on one or two of these that could create just enough of a gap to where Ohio State would still be able to put up points, like you're saying, because I agree with you. I just don't know. It depends on when this might happen. If it happens early on in the game and Tennessee's able to, I mean, they still have a good defense. They're still able to kind of keep it at bay. Like, dude, like they could possibly they have the running back to milk the clock. You know what I'm
From
saying?
a time of possession standpoint, Tennessee and Ohio State's dead even at 29 minutes per game is normally what they hold on to the ball for.
I think that's insane, by the way, because
So
Tennessee's not usually known for that. They're
we're
usually
we're
known
very,
for less.
very we're capable of running the clock out and bleeding the game as well. Um, I I think that it's crazy. I know you said that it seems like Tennessee generates more explosive plays. Um, and I know it's a part of it's because Nico's missing on something or the receiver's dropping something, and it's all it takes is that clicking, and then he could be a completely different player and turn into the player that we all probably think he's going to be. Um, I just I think that it's going to be challenging going up against an offense like this, being spread out wide, but I think the way that our defensive coordinator Jim Knowles does the defense, it's a fast tempo defense. They get the signal in fast. They get lined up fast. I'm not worried about a tempo situation where we're going to get exposed because we don't line up fast enough. I don't think we're going to get taken advantage of in that way. I don't think I think Tennessee has a very good rushing attack, but I really think our front seven can literally do enough to keep Sampson to where he can go over 100. But I don't. I think we can keep him from not being the one that beats us.
Well,
It really comes down to if Nico's hitting on those downfield passes, man. Because
that's
I
my whole
think that
point. That's my whole
yeah,
point. That's the only point that I want to make because, like I said, it'll be close. But if he connects, like I'm not gonna say it could get dirty. Like I said, I don't want to repeat what we've talked about because we've been on this for a hot minute. I got to go through and edit a lot of this stuff, out. But at the same time, like I'm I'm actually excited about this. I was talking to you, Kyle, and I think I mentioned this to you too, Dustin. I think that this is arguably, even though whatever team wins this, they have the hardest gauntlet after the fact. I think that this is arguably the national title. It could easily be the national title in the first round. That's why I think this game is so hard to predict. I do think both teams are very, very equal. But if we were to give our final thoughts before, obviously, I conclude, because we obviously got to hop off here. I still got to go finish Christmas shopping and whatnot with the wife and everything. And then, Kyle, I'm more than likely going to reconnect with you. I think tomorrow, Kyle, I really want to hear a lot of what you have to say, like in terms of your statistics, because I know you did your research, and I want to hear what you had to say with that. So I'll probably end up giving you a call. But give our final thoughts, Dustin. What's the key takeaway, in your opinion, the biggest indicator that Tennessee has to do? Just give me their game plan in order to win the game.
Well, like I said in the last episode, we have three major things. Number one being our defense. Of course, they have to play. They have to get turnovers. Number two, Nico, like you said, it has to click. You're right. He hasn't clicked all year. And then number three is Samson. And then I'll give an honorable mention to our special teams. We have to capitalize on points. We have to capitalize on all four of those things, because you're right. We have been consistent in the games, but consistent in one thing a game. Well, two things, I guess, because our defense has been the most consistent, except for that Georgia game and the Arkansas game. But other than that, I hope to God, dude, that Nico is that snap of the finger moment, and we all see it, and we're all just like, yes.
I don't know what to say about any of that, because I kind of already acted like I was a Tennessee fan. Even though I'm really not, obviously. I just think that what I think. Kyle, I'll explain more to you here in a moment too. But Kyle, biggest takeaway that Ohio State has to do in this game in order to win?
I think, like I kind of stated a little bit before, I think we can't let Nico's legs beat us. We can't have everything locked up and let him skimmer down the field for 15, 20 yards or even house one. Got to contain him and not let him slip out of the pocket. You keep him in the pocket, more than likely he's going to turn over the ball. If he does run the ball, you gotta smack him. You really gotta put a hit on him. I think the other thing is we gotta get Samson down on first contact. He has 927 yards after contact this year. We have honestly had some moments where we over pursuit into the backfield and completely outrun the defender, and he just goes right by. So we've got to make those tackles in the backfield. We've got to get Tennessee rattled, make them commit penalties, because they are one of the highest committing. They get a lot of penalties. I think they get 8 to 9 average a game, and Ohio State averages about 2. So got to win the penalty battle. I think that if Ohio State can rush for 150 yards in this game, I think that will be enough to open up the pass game. And if we can open up our pass game too, there's no way that secondary is going to be able to cover all our receivers. There's just no way. Like, I'm not saying they're going to win every battle, every play, but I think I like our offensive skill versus their defensive skill. That might be a little biased, but and don't get me wrong, I think McCoy is a great DB, and y'all have some great secondary players. But I think that the defense is going to be a key in this game. It's got to be. The secondary's got to not. They got to lock these receivers up. Lock them up. I expect Samson to do his thing to some regard, but you got to contain him. You got to keep him under 150 to 100 yards, and that's our best thing to do for him. I don't see that happening. I could see him going over 150, but that, to me, we've got to rotate players on the defense. Tennessee can run 80 plays a game, and we tend to like to play our defensive line every snap of the game. That's gonna come up big in the fourth quarter. I hope we have some bodies to rotate on the D line, and I hope we do. That's really it for me. As far as that, I'll add one more thing, and it involves the kicking game. I don't. We've got to generate something to either hold them to field goals when it gets in the red zone. We basically just need to win the red zone battles on both sides of the ball, and I think that's all we got to do. I hope we can milk. I hope it's a minute left in this game, and we get the ball because we just stopped them on fourth down, and we're milking the rest of this clock. That's what I want to see. That's how I want this game to finish.
It looks like we lost Dustin there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to obviously wrap this up. Dude, I appreciate you obviously joining me. We're going to get more structured, more detailed as we obviously move on, because this is obviously something new that we've done. We've never once in the history of this show had two people on aside from myself. It's typically me just doing it, but this was obviously exciting, and I look forward to seeing how much more creative we can get as we continue to push forward. Definitely an exciting one happening in Columbus, Ohio on Saturday night at 8 o'clock when Tennessee, obviously is already up there to take on Ohio State. You have a final score prediction of, I believe it was 28-21, correct?
27-24, I believe.
27-24. Dustin was 35-28, and mine was 27-20. So, it'll be cool to obviously recap. I think what we're more than likely going to do is, Dustin had mentioned that he wants to be a part of, he wants me to go live after the fact. And he said he's going to hop on with me no matter what. Win or loss, he's either going to be singing Rocky Top at the top of his lungs, or he's obviously going to be crying himself to sleep, since it's going to be super late. So if you obviously want to join us on that, I think that'll be pretty dope. We're not going to make it a long one, that one, because there are some things that need to be discussed, in my opinion. But I do think it'll be fun because this is the game that everybody's looking forward to. So obviously for you guys who are tuning in, you already know we're already anticipating potentially going live. We'll obviously give more indicators, as to whether or not that'll happen as we get closer to it, specifically the day of. But if you guys are new, obviously you enjoy the show and, obviously consider subscribing to it. Kyle, obviously, any last words?
Yeah, Cam, I'd like to thank you for letting me come on. It's the first time I've ever actually had to sit and talk, I feel like, to a camera about sports. It feels a little weird. I'm sure that'll kind of be ironed out after a few times of doing it, because I generally just love speaking ball. I'm passionate about football. You know this. I know you're passionate about football. I could talk it all day long. We could literally have. I hope we have so many different videos in the future, and I look forward to making as many as we possibly can. And regardless if it's something that takes off for us or doesn't take off for us, I know we still enjoy it. So that's all that matters. But I thank you for letting me come on and talk to you and Dusty. And I know as far as whenever the game ends, if y'all want to live chat, I'm completely cool with that. Hopefully I'm in high spirits and happy, because this game is it's different for me compared to, I think, normal Buckeye fans. Just me living in Tennessee, I've heard for 17 years that Ohio State's not better than Tennessee, and in some degree, or especially compared to the SEC. But it means a lot to me, and I really want this one. So I can't wait.
I know you do, man, and I just appreciate you being on. But that'll do it, obviously, for this show. Of course, like I mentioned, consider subscribing. And until next time, CFB Whispers out. And Kyle, you can give me a call.